Today, the House gave final approval for the Respect for Marriage bill. It mandates that all federal institutions recognize same-sex marriages and interracial marriages. And one of the representatives from Virginia, his name was Bob Good, stated that this bill disrespects God's definition of marriage. And briefly, I want to talk about the reasons why I strongly disagree with his position on this matter. For me, Christianity is not about belonging to a special club, a special group of righteous, pure people who are opposed to sinners, and that the righteous people all go to heaven and the sinners are condemned to hell. For me, being a person of faith is about following the teachings of Jesus, someone who believed entirely that God's love is for absolutely every person without exception. Now, the Bible is not about homosexuality. In fact, it's a very peripheral element to it at most. Jesus doesn't say anything about it. He does say a lot about the importance of loving each other. Jesus teaches even that people who are outsiders, people who are treated in the way that I've seen LGBTQ plus people humiliated and embarrassed and discriminated against. He says those are the very people that we need to protect and care for. Jesus also teaches about the realm of God, a place and a time and a way of being in which no one is left out. No one has too little, where every person is cared for. When people talk about the Bible and homosexuality, they often talk about the Apostle Paul. And there's two sections in which the Apostle Paul, it all mentions this question. And in Paul's time, it was possible to basically own slaves for the purpose of sex. And I'm certain that Paul did not have in mind the kind of elderly couples that I know, same-sex couples, who've been caring and loving each other for decades. And again, Paul's message is not about sexuality at all. For Paul, it's about grace. It's the way that God blesses us even when we don't deserve it. When God is present to us and cares for us, even when we've done terrible things. That what we've done doesn't determine how God feels about us. That God loves us like a kind of parent. The issue comes up in the book of Judges, where a mob basically attacks some visitors to a person's house, and the person sends out the concubine instead, and they violently mistreat the concubine instead of the male guests. But the point there is not about male versus female love; it's about sexual violence. And the Bible and Jesus' teaching certainly prohibit against sexual violence. So the one place really in the Bible where it's very explicit is in the book of Leviticus. It says that a man should not lie down with another man. And there are many things in the book of Leviticus that Jesus quotes in his own teachings. Jesus talks about being perfect. When Jesus says, be perfect as your Father is perfect, that comes from Leviticus. When he says you should love your neighbor as yourself, that comes from Leviticus. But there's a lot of other things in Leviticus that are harder for us to understand. Like it's also an abomination to eat shellfish. It's an abomination to plant two different kinds of crops in the same field. It's prohibited to shave your beard or to have tattoos. There's many things in the book of Leviticus that we certainly don't regard as being as rules that we follow in any way today. Now, before I close, I want to share, first of all, this is very personal to me, not only because I'm a person in an interracial relationship, and I can imagine a society that prohibited my relationship, but it's also very dear to me because of people I love very much. In 1991, I went to the first blessing of a same-sex union that I'd ever seen in a church. And it was part of the main service. So at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning, we were all gathered there for the regular service. And we all knew what terrible barriers the couple that we were there to support had faced in their life. They'd been rejected by their families. Their love was condemned by society. They weren't safe even to express the love that they felt for each other. And let me describe to you what it felt like. Sitting in that congregation with people with tears coming down their faces because they were filled with joy that this couple so bravely sought God's blessing and received that in the community of the faithful. My name is Malcolm Clemens Young. I'm the Dean of Grace Cathedral here in San Francisco, California. Thanks for watching More Good News.